Hey guys, I just went ahead and finished Hogwarts Legacy, finally. Took me a little while, but I've been very busy, so hopefully I can finish Atomic Heart and then Wolong when that comes out a little bit faster and get you guys the review a little bit faster, but wanted to go ahead and give you guys my review and my impressions as somebody that's not a Harry Potter fan at all. I'm not like a Potterhead. I didn't know anything really about Harry Potter, the universe, or anything. I've only seen each of the movies once, and that's when they came out, all those years ago. So, and my memory is absolutely atrocious. If you know me at all, you know that. So, I kind of just went into this as a blank slate, not really knowing anything about the Harry Potter universe or anything like that. So, the review I'm going to give you is a little bit unique because I think most people that are playing the game or pick up the game early are Harry Potter fans. And I don't fall into that category. I'm just a dude that loves video games. So let's get into the review, shall we? I'll give you my pros, my cons, and then I'll give you my final verdict. So the first pro right off the bat, and I honestly thought that this was going to be the weakest part of the game. It actually ended up being the strongest part of the game is the combat. The combat is fantastic in Hogwarts Legacy. It does this really interesting thing that I wish more video games did, where almost every single enemy and enemy type has weaknesses, and you can exploit those. Either, for example, there's like toad enemies, right? And you can cast Leviosa on them when they're about to throw their tongue out at you, and you can hang them from their tongue. And then you can use, I think it's Defendo, the cutting magic, and you can just chop their freaking tongue off and basically one-shot them. Or when they jump at you to attack, you can dodge that and then hit them with one of your like force spells that knocks them off balance. You'll flip them over, and then you can attack their stomach, which is unarmored. And stuff like this actually turns enemies that seem really hard, like those toad enemies were giving me and a lot of other people real troubles, until you go into your collection and you read and you take notes and see what their weaknesses are. And I really love that because almost every enemy in the game has that. And not only does it just add a much needed mechanics to each and every fight, but it adds a bit of like game knowledge. So you actually are thinking while you're fighting, you're not autopiloting, and you're like, oh, this enemy, I think I need to do that, and oh, that many enemy, I need to do that. And it also causes you to use a bunch of spells that maybe you normally wouldn't. A spell that doesn't seem very good, like Flipendo, which just causes people to flip. You might go, well, why the hell would I use that when I can use Accio to pull them to me, or Depulso to push them away, into walls and stuff? Those seem far more practical. Well, there's certain situations where Flipendo is really good. Like if you're fighting a troll and they do a slam attack, you can use Flipendo and throw their club back in their face and expose them for a bunch of damage. So I was really surprised with the combat, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. And don't even get me started on when you're actually fighting other wizards. That shit is dope. Like I said, I'm not a Harry Potter fan or anything, but when you're fighting a bunch of dudes and they're casting spells and you're deflecting the spells back at them and stupefying this dude and freaking, Expelliarmusing this guy, it's really cool. And there's a good flair to it. The animations are clean. It makes you feel awesome. Another thing that's great right out the gate, took Cyberpunk 2 fucking years to add this shit, a transmog system. There is a gear system in the game, and to avoid you looking like an absolute dunce, if you're trying to, be statistically meta and optimal, by equipping, all of the highest stat gear that you get, because you're constantly leveling up, and getting better and better gear, to avoid you looking like a fool like you did in Cyberpunk for 2 years. Now, this game, right out the gate, it has a transmog system, which, for those of you that don't know, it essentially is like layered armor. You can choose the appearance of the gear and still get the stats from the gear. So it's absolutely fantastic. Wanted to give that game credit for that, because a lot of games take a long time to add that. Monster Hunter took years to add a layered armor system, so props to them for that right out the gate. I also think the immersion and the actual world is fantastic for somebody that's not really well acquainted with this universe, I instantly was intrigued. It doesn't matter if, we're going through a freaking minecart and it's like this crazy underground banking system, I think, or something. Or you're just flying around the broom and you're seeing all of the different wildlife and magical beasts, and the even the herbs in this universe are interesting. Like even the fucking plants and the horklump juice and stuff. Like even the plants have character, and everything is just very, very interesting. And when you're walking through Hogwarts and stuff like that, and the students are talking and the teachers are talking, and ghosts are walking around doing stuff, it really helps you feel immersed in this world. It makes it feel lived in. And I imagine if you're a Harry Potter fan, you feel like incredibly immersed. And it's probably fantastic since you've read the books and seen the movies, and you've probably always wanted to be in that universe. Well, now you are, and it genuinely feels like you are in that universe. The immersion is done incredibly well. And along with that is just the attention to detail. There is so much detail in this game. Graphically, it's not that impressive from, a character standpoint or a texture standpoint or anything like that, but the actual design and the meticulous attention to detail when it comes to just walking through Hogwarts and all of these spiral staircases building themselves, and then you jump into a toad's mouth and it freaking shoots you out somewhere else, and like this really fascinating, almost maze-like structure of some of the buildings and architecture in the game is phenomenal. And I have to assume that it's loyal to the actual source material, because I would be blown away if these dudes just created this shit on their own. Like, it is genuinely very fascinating and enjoyable to go through and to wonder, to look at, even if the graphics themselves aren't the craziest thing in the world. That attention to detail really is. The music, obviously, it's fucking Harry Potter music. It's been slapping for years. That's one of the only things I really know and pay attention to with Harry Potter, is that it's got some banger soundtracks. It still has banger soundtracks. All of the music is phenomenal in the game. I have no doubt that when awards come around, this game will probably win awards for best music. No doubt in my mind. I also think that a lot of the side content is very, very good in the game. Especially Sebastian's storyline, which is like another student, and Poppy's storyline. I found those very interesting, and honestly more interesting than the main story. Like, I wanted to be hanging out with Poppy and Sebastian the whole game, because I was really, really interested in the stuff that was going on in their storyline with magical beasts and dark magic and stuff like that. No spoilers here, but it's really it ends up being a lot more fascinating and enthralling than the main story, which ends up being kind of a wet fart towards the end, in my opinion. And along with the side content being quite good, there's also just a lot of content. I almost 100% the game. We could look at the challenges here and you can see, spoiler free, I did a lot of fucking shit in the game. It took me about 41 hours. So if you were to really go through, like, I didn't go through and I was like, I'm gonna do all the Merlin trials and blah, blah, blah. I did the interesting stuff like the bandit camps, right? And rescuing a bunch of the beasts, quite a lot of time in the Room of Requirement. The Room of Requirement is like its own game entirely. You can think of it almost like a Fallout 4 settlement building thing, where you can decorate the place, you can set up more practical things, like, which is basically what I used it for, like a place to store your herbs and grow herbs, a place to make potions, and most importantly, a place to upgrade and identify your gear and implement traits in them, which will improve various skills in the game and kind of allow you to craft a build. And in order to implement those skills and enchant your gear, you have to go through and get some of the magical beasts and take care of the magical beasts in your vivarium. So it's actually a lot of content. Like, if you were to do all of it, it's easily probably 45, 50 hours, which may not be as much as a lot of people were assuming. I think a lot of people went in and they thought it was going to be a 100-hour game or something like that. It's not at all. But, and there's not a ton of replay value, which we'll touch on in the cons, but at least not yet. But yeah, I think that there's a ton of content here and more than enough to justify, you know, a $60 price tag, in my opinion. And also, if you're on PC, you have the wonderful benefit of mods. There's already a thriving modding community for the game that's only going to get stronger, and I have no doubt in my mind it's going to get more and more advanced. I mean, they have fucking multiplayer mods already for the game where you can play multiplayer with people. And the game's been out, what, a couple weeks? Like, it's absolutely insane how fast the mods are coming. If you see my video about American Hogwarts, then you know I had a gun for my wand and gunshots, and it was fucking hilarious. So I can't wait to see what the mods do in the game. That could potentially add a ton of replayability and extra content, similar to like a Bethesda game. But let's get into the cons, because not everything is great, and one of the biggest problems with the game is the performance. Can't speak for console, but on PC, it is middling. Oftentimes in towns with optimized settings, I looked up optimized settings, which is a mix of, you know, actually I can just show you real quick here what my graphics settings are. And keep in mind, I have a 3080 Ti, a Ryzen 7 5800X overclocked to 4.2, 48 gigs of RAM, and the game on an NVMe SSD. And with these settings, which as you can see, a lot of stuff on low and medium, I was constantly getting and DLSS on quality, I was getting about like 60, mostly 50s in the towns. So the performance is really not there. If on a beast rig like mine, it's running like that. God forbid, if you have a weaker PC, you're probably struggling to hit 60 and keep 60. In the open world, it was sitting at around 80 most of the time, so it wasn't that bad, but still, you should expect from a game that looks like this, let's be real, it's not the best looking game out there. I understand there's a lot of moving pieces to it. It is an open world game, but still unacceptable. Hopefully they'll fix that in time. I also experienced quite a few bugs at 2 times where I fell through the map. And then I was trying to get back from the map because it doesn't allow you to access menus or anything if you're falling for some fucking reason. So I couldn't just press pause and reload a save. And then it started auto-saving while I was out of the map. So luckily the game keeps a history of several auto-saves. Thank God for that, or else I would have been out God knows how many hours of progress. So save often. And I also had several bugs. I've looked it up online. These are pretty common with certain things not loading, whether they're key aspects to a puzzle or just like doors opening and stuff like that. Some of that shit doesn't load, so you have to reload your last save. So a little bit annoying, a little bit buggy, but nothing absolutely crazy or game breaking. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the big elephant in the room, the floating elephant in the room, which is Quidditch. It's not in the game. They give a good story reason for explaining why, but it's not in the game. I know that's a big con for a lot of people. Since I'm not a Harry Potter fan, I don't really even know that much about it. All I remember from it is the movies where Harry gets a weird floppy arm or something. but yeah, it's not in the game, so I did want to mention it for cons. Also, talking about the gear system, I do think it's a con because there's so much shitty gear. You'll go through an entire dungeon, solve several puzzles just to get to this hidden chest. You open it up, and it's a green fucking pair of trousers that's a level under what you are. It's terrible. All of the gear in the game, except from these like super rare actual legendary chests, all of the gear in the game is random. So as a result, unless it's one of those legendary chests, it's 99% gonna be fucking garbage. And then you're gonna have to be managing your inventory and just selling shit because there's no way to check the contents of a chest before you grab it. So you're just instantly like pressing to check something and it's picking up a piece of shit green, loading your inventory. Then you have to take time in a terribly clunky menu where you have to hold the left stick to delete stuff. So, and then you have to go to every single slot and check and be like, okay, I have some greens in this slot, delete, hold left stick, hold left stick. It gets a bit annoying after you've, collected literally hundreds of pieces of garbage gear. I just wish there was like a Diablo-like filter or torchlight-like feature where I could filter it and be like, no greens. Like, past this level, I don't want any greens. I don't want any blues. I'm not fucking swapping to them. Just give me the legendaries. Don't even loot it if it's not a legendary. I don't need money. I don't need to sell the stuff. It's garbage. But unfortunately, you can't. I also think that there's a lack of spell upgrades. Most spells, not even all of them, but most spells have one upgrade that you can do through the talents tree that you can see on screen. You'll get a talent point every single time you level up. Max level is 40. So you do have a limit of what talents you can get. And there's just a real lack of the upgrades. Me and my friend were talking about it. There's certain enemies that'll cast like lightning storms and firestorms and stuff. They'll charge up and use them. And it would have been really cool to see that be an upgrade where you can hold a cast or something and cause a giant like attack, especially for enemies that you've just stunned for a while. But there isn't. And as a result, you do end up like, the game is lucky that it's only this long. If it was a 100-hour game, I do think that you would really start to feel the lack of upgrades in the spells, and it would start to get repetitive. But because it's only around 40 hours for doing like a full playthrough like this, it's lucky. Like, it is fortunate. It's not particularly egregious, but you do start to feel it towards the end of like, man, I really wish there was a little bit more I could do to these spells. And I think the biggest con in the entire game, saving the biggest for last, there's no real choices in this game, and there's no real morality in the game. Now, this is a major fuck up on their end, because all of the advertising that I've seen for the game is like, are you gonna go with the dark arts? Are you gonna do this and be evil? Or are you gonna save people and be a paragon of hope for all of the little wizardlings out there? In the actual game, that is not the case at all. My friend played through evil, I played through as good. Our story is literally 99.999% the same. Your quote-unquote evil choice for most of the quests in the game is simply asking for a payment instead of doing the deed for free. And then once you do that, they just pay you, and there's no real consequence of that, so I don't know why you wouldn't just always ask for a payment. On top of that, you can use the unforgivable curses with reckless abandon, and it doesn't change fucking anything. I played through my whole game not picking up any of the dark arts talents or using unforgivable curses because I wanted the good ending. Well, it's basically the exact same. You get one decision at the very end of the game that actually changes anything. So seriously, big bag fumbled here. Especially, I would be fine with it if their advertising didn't make it seem like this is an in-depth decision-based RPG where your story is going to branch out and there's going to be various narratives that unfold by your decisions. Unfortunately, that's not the fucking case at all. So I don't know what they're thinking advertising the game as that, and it really set me up for disappointment once you start talking to people and you realize, oh, the house that I picked doesn't actually fucking matter. You still hang out with all the same people, and it just unlocks, like, 1 or 2 extra side quests, and it changes your common room that you're never gonna be at. Well, that's kind of fucked. And it changes, like, 1 piece of gear that you can get. Well, that's kind of fucked. So, absolute huge blunder on their part. But overall, I still think the game is quite enjoyable. I think it's definitely worth your time. Maybe not if you're one of those people that's like, I need an hour of gameplay for every dollar that I spend. If that's the case, then this isn't for you. I don't mean to harp on those people, but I think that when you say shit like that, you're really promoting quantity over quality. And it's always better, guys, to get a really good 10-hour game than to get a bloated, shitty 100-hour game. The late Total Biscuit said it the best, okay? Would you rather have a puddle with the depth of the ocean at your disposal, right? It may be a small source, but it has just wonderful complexity and emotion and mechanics to it? Or would you rather have the ocean with the depth of a puddle? You know, a lot of content, but there's absolutely no depth to any of it, and it's all just surface level horse shit to pad out a runtime. I would much rather have a game like this, where I do think it's still a bit long at 30 to 40 hours, but the content for the most part is quite consistently good. Some of the side activities, they are kind of mid, I'm not gonna lie, but like the Merlin trials and the ancient magic things, but other than that, it's mostly quite good. So overall, I genuinely enjoyed my experience. I would recommend it to everybody. If I had to give it a rating on a scale, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's a great game. For me, 5 is average, 6 is above average, 7 is good, and 8 is great. I think it's a great game. I think it's solidly worth your time, and this is coming from somebody that, like I've said a few times now, I sound like a fucking broken record, but it is just to further illustrate the point that I'm not a Harry Potter fan. So if I like it, if you're even remotely a Harry Potter fan, you'll fall in love. But anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thanks for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see all of you in the next video. It's from Sharon Maroney. Bye-bye.